You think you're being positive, but in reality, you're just avoiding the truth. You think you're doing fine, but deep down, your mind is constantly unsettled, tired, quick to anger, easily hurt, and ready to break down when something goes wrong. You try to control everything, but the more you try, the more everything slips out of your hands. Because the problem isn't your circumstances, it's how you think. You were never taught how to train your mind, never learned how to master your emotions, never had a system for living that keeps you steady, no matter what happens out there. Stoicism isn't a philosophy to read for fun. It's an operating system for people who want to take control of themselves, instead of living like puppets pulled by life's strings. In this video, I'll share 7 Stoic habits I practice every day. They're simple, practical, and powerful enough to reshape how you think and live. If you're truly serious, watch to the end, and I'll show you how to apply each step, starting today. What you're about to hear next could change the way you see your entire life. Hit subscribe, like, and stay with me, because the final minutes will be the most important. Morning is when we're most easily deceived, not by others, but by our own minds. The moment we wake up, we get swept into the stress of the day. Messages, meetings, deadlines, kids, money pressure, and right from the start, we let the world take over our minds. I used to live that way. I used to wake up and grab my phone, check email, scroll through social media, watch other people's lives, and then I'd feel behind. Feel like I wasn't enough. Feel like today was just another stressful day I had to survive. I got sucked into that loop every morning and dragged myself through the day like I was running from something. Until I learned a lesson from Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor who wrote in his journal every morning before going to battle. He called it the art of preparing your mind. Not to control others, but to stop being ruled by your own emotions. He wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, remind yourself, you will meet fools, selfish people, ingrates, traitors, jealous types, and the arrogant. But they can't harm you unless you let them." That line hit me hard. I realized the issue isn't whether today will be difficult. The issue is whether I'm mentally prepared. That's when I started a new morning habit. Not as someone being dragged by life, but as someone stepping into the day on purpose. I don't touch my phone. I sit up straight. I breathe deep and remind myself, today, someone will piss you off. Bad news might come. Something will not go to plan. That's not a mistake. That's just how life works. This is premeditatio malorum, one of Stoicism's core principles. Visualize what might go wrong, so when it happens, you're not shocked or crushed. I write down what might test my patience. A careless comment from a coworker, an unexpected bill, a canceled meeting, a tantrum from my kid. Then I ask, if that happens, how will I respond in a way that keeps my dignity intact? I'm not trying to avoid hardship. I'm training myself not to be shaken by it. Then I list the 3 most important things I want to get done, not urgent tasks, but meaningful ones. The kind I'd regret skipping. I don't overload my schedule because I've learned that a Stoic doesn't race the clock. He lives fully in each moment. I read a few lines from meditations. Sometimes it's just a sentence, but it's enough to bring me back to what matters. I'm not here to impress people. I'm here to live with reason and integrity. Then I get out of bed, not to chase deadlines, but to fulfill my role as a real warrior. Not afraid of being tired, not afraid of setbacks, not afraid of rejection, only afraid of wasting the life I've been given. I'm not saying you have to wake up at 4 a.m. You don't need a fancy ritual. You just need 10 quiet minutes. Not to start the day like a victim, but like someone who chose to wake up. I used to live differently. I used to wake up and let life push me around, then lie in bed at night, wondering what the hell I even did that day, besides survive it. Now it's different. Every morning is a rebirth. A reminder, you're not immortal. This could be your last time opening your eyes. So how will you live today without regret? I still get tired, still have tough days, but my mind doesn't wobble like it used to, because I gave it a solid start. And that steadiness is what carries me through the rest of the day. That's why in Stoicism, morning isn't just a time slot. It's the moment that shapes the mindset of a man. Because if you don't train your mind when it's at its sharpest, then who will? Have you ever been hit so hard by something awful that it knocked the breath out of you? A phone call in the middle of the night saying someone you love is gone. A cold, abrupt message from someone who once held your heart. A meeting that strips away your job and your confidence. A look of ice from your own child that makes you feel like a stranger. That choking feeling doesn't just come from the pain, it comes from the shock. Because you never thought it would happen. You lived like everything would stay the same, like today was guaranteed. And that's why you broke. Not because of the event, but because you were mentally unprepared. Stoics are different. They train their minds every day to face loss, not by pretending to be tough, but by visualizing what could go wrong. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, a father, a warrior, once wrote, "Each morning, remember that today you may meet betrayal, ingratitude, injustice, bad news. But don't be shocked, that's how the world works." Epictetus advised, "When you kiss your child, remind yourself they may be gone tomorrow. Not to be cold, but to love them more fully, more deeply." I learned that lesson when I watched my father collapse from a stroke. Before that, I always assumed he'd be strong, that he'd always be there. I canceled calls, skipped dinners, brushed off hugs because I was busy. Then he was in the ICU, motionless, breathing through a machine, and all I wanted was one normal morning to tell him, "I love you." But it was too late, and for the next 3 months, I wasn't the same. I started imagining what I might lose, so I'd never again let the important things slip away in the blur of daily life. Now, each morning, I ask myself, if today were the last time I saw my wife, did I kiss her long enough? If something happened to my child, have I left them with a memory warm enough to carry? If I lost my job, have I been giving it at my full effort or just phoning it in? Negative visualization sounds pessimistic, but in truth, it's one of the most powerful mental disciplines there is. It doesn't weaken you, it sharpens you. It doesn't kill hope, it teaches you to live with weight. It forces you to look at everything you have and realize how precious it really is. And it prepares you for loss. So if it comes, you're not crushed, not frozen, not panicked. You saw it coming. You were ready. And strangely, the more you visualize the worst, the more precious the present becomes. You eat dinner as if it's your last. You walk with your child like they're about to grow up and leave your arms. You approach even boring tasks with respect, because deep down, someday you might wish you could come back to this exact ordinary moment. Stoicism calls this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. Not to live in fear, but to be prepared, to accept the reality that anything you love could vanish tomorrow, and that knowledge changes how you live today. You stop drifting, you stop assuming, you stop missing what matters. If you still have parents, a partner, children, a job, your health, train yourself to see them as if tomorrow they might be gone. Because the truth is, you don't know that they won't be, and the only thing you can control is how you treat them today. At night, when the world goes quiet, the mind speaks loudest. No more phone calls, no more emails, no more meetings, no one calling your name. No role to play, no boss, no dad, no husband, no provider. You're just left alone, with yourself. And if you've got the guts, you'll ask the question, how did I live today? Most of us don't. We crash into bed, throw on a movie, scroll through our feeds hoping to forget. Sometimes we drink, sometimes we work late. Sometimes we just try to shut our brains off because we're afraid. Afraid of facing ourselves once the masks come off. Afraid of realizing we lived a meaningless day, that we let emotions run wild, that we acted selfish, petty, or out of control, that we said things we shouldn't have said, did things we shouldn't have done. And worst of all, we missed the moments we should have cherished. Seneca once wrote, "Each night before sleep, I question myself. What did I do wrong today? How did I react? Did I overcome anger, desire, fear? Am I growing or regressing?" No one forced him. No one scored his answers. But he understood. If you don't have that conversation with yourself, you'll never grow. I started doing this during a period when I felt myself slipping. I worked hard. I made money. But I was getting angry all the time, with my wife, my kids, my co-workers. I lived like a ticking bomb, and anyone who came close could get hurt. Every night I came home, turned on the TV, scrolled mindlessly, then passed out, just trying to escape. Until one night I caught the look in my daughter's eyes. It wasn't joy, it was hesitation, fear, disconnection. That night, for the first time in years, I sat down. No phone, no music, no movies, just me and a notebook. I wrote, "Today I overreacted when my kids spilled milk. I snapped at my wife because I was stressed. I told a small lie to a client and I knew it was a lie. I wasted 2 hours on meaningless content. I lived a day I'm not proud of." That confrontation terrified me, but it also saved me. From that day on, I wrote every night. Nothing long, nothing fancy, just a few lines. How did I live today? How did I handle my emotions? Did I act in line with the values I claim to believe in? Did anger, greed, or fear hijack me? And if so, what will I do differently next time? Epictetus called this the behavior of someone who thinks. He said, "The ignorant man goes to bed unaware of his mistakes. The wise man reviews himself nightly, as if standing before a fair judge." That line hit me hard. I realized no one needs to see my transformation. I just need the courage to face myself, to question myself. As long as I'm willing to be brutally honest, I've still got hope. Self-monitoring isn't self-punishment. It's not about beating yourself up. It's about stepping back from the role you played today and returning to being the commander of your own mind. It's how you identify the bad habits quietly taking control. It's how you extract lessons, not from lofty theory, but from the life you're actually living, minute by minute. And here's the strange part. When you stick with that habit every night, you start to live differently during the day. You speak less, you stay composed, you don't snap as easily. You don't say things just to feel powerful. You don't act to impress, because you know, tonight, you'll have to answer for it. No judgment hits harder than your own. No one sees your bullshit as clearly as you do. That's why the ancient Stoics always ended their day with a silent conversation. Not to complain, not to justify, but to cleanse. Because if the day is the battle, then the night is when you sharpen your sword. So tomorrow, you return to the fight with a clearer mind, one step closer to becoming the man you truly want to be. There's a hard truth most men are never taught. Most of what makes you stressed, hurt, or furious lies outside your control. You can't make someone understand you. You can't force your wife to come back. You can't make your child love you if they've already pulled away. You can't rewrite the past. You can't make people behave the way you expect. You can't fix the world with your outrage. And if you keep holding on to what you have no control over, it'll drive you insane. I've been there. I used to live like I had power over everything. I tried to change an ex, tried to force her to love me the way I wanted. I pushed myself to prove I wasn't a failure, that I deserved recognition. I panicked when a project got delayed, even though I'd already done my part. I lost sleep over a bad review from a superior, even when I knew I wasn't wrong. I tortured myself with thoughts like, if only I'd said something different. Every move I made was rooted in the same flawed belief. I can control everything. Epictetus, a man who was once a slave, whose leg was shattered beyond repair, said something I wish I had learned earlier. There are two things in life: what is within our control and what is not. If you fail to distinguish the two, you'll never have peace. That sentence shattered the illusion I was clinging to. I began to see it clearly. I can't control someone else's feelings. I can't decide if they love or hate me. I can't stop an accident from happening. I can't control the weather, the economy, or people's opinions. So what can I do? I can control how I respond. I can control what I say, how I act, what I stand for. I can choose to stay calm when someone offends me. I can choose not to lash out when provoked. I can choose not to feed myself toxic content. I can walk away from toxic people. I can choose to do what's right, even if nobody sees it. That's the line between someone who's free and someone who's a slave to his emotions. You don't control the world, but you do control yourself. And that's enough. I began using this as a daily practice. Whenever something made me angry, I'd stop, take a breath, and ask, is this under my control? If the answer was no, I let it go. Not because I was weak, but because I was smart. Holding on to it only drained me. If the answer was yes, I acted. No complaining. No waiting for someone else. I did my part, I gave my best, then I let go of the result. I wrote a line and taped it to my desk. Do your part. Let go of the rest. It wasn't a feel-good quote. It was survival. That mindset helped me stop blaming others. I stopped asking, why don't they understand me? And started asking, did I actually communicate clearly? I stopped being bitter about lost opportunities and started asking, was I truly ready so I won't miss the next one? I stopped blaming the situation and started owning my response, because the world doesn't owe you an easy ride, but you owe it to yourself to be mentally steady. Stoics aren't passive. They act fiercely, but only on what's theirs to act on. And for the rest, they accept it. Not with defeat, but with clarity. No resistance, no whining, no bitterness. That's what sets them free. True freedom isn't about controlling everything. It's about not being ruled by what you can't control. You'll still feel pain, but you won't fall apart. You'll still feel loss, but you won't lose yourself. You'll still face hardship, but you'll face it on your terms. That's the quiet strength of someone who understands the line. What's mine, I act on it. What isn't, I release it. Without guilt, without regret. This isn't just a video. This is the reminder you needed today. Hit subscribe and like if you want someone in your corner, pushing you to live by your real values. Life doesn't give you a warning before it hits. It doesn't announce when someone you love is about to die. It doesn't notify you when the job you've given 10 years to vanishes overnight. It doesn't give you time to prepare when illness shows up out of nowhere. It just comes, fast, cold, and without mercy. And when it does, how will you respond? Will you collapse? Panic? Blame everyone? Strain to survive while falling apart inside? Or will you face it calmly, like someone who's already trained for this kind of pain? That's why the Stoics practiced what they called voluntary discomfort. Not because they were masochists, not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they understood this. If you don't train your mind to handle difficulty, it'll break you when it comes. I used to think that if I worked hard, lived right, and treated people well, things would go smoothly. I believed in some kind of natural fairness, but life doesn't operate on fairness. It doesn't measure your effort before deciding what to give you. One day, I lost my job because of a restructuring I had nothing to do with. Another day, my wife said she wanted to leave, not because I cheated, not because she found someone else, just because she didn't feel anything anymore. These things came without warning, without reason, without mercy. And I realized, if I didn't build strength from within, nothing would save me from my own emotions. Musonius Rufus, Epictetus's teacher, said, "Just as the body becomes strong by enduring cold, hunger, and thirst, the mind must be trained through hardship if it's to keep its dignity in adversity." Stoics don't wait for hardship to train. They seek it out, on their terms. They fast, not because they're poor, but to prove that hunger won't kill them. They sleep on hard floors, not because they lack a bed, but so that when life throws them down, they're already used to the ground. They wear rough clothes, walk barefoot, even when they can afford better, just to remind themselves, I don't need luxury to survive. I started doing this after losing everything for the second time. I used to spend like water, thinking I deserved to enjoy myself. But when all income vanished, I panicked. I clung. I borrowed. I broke. After that, I made a decision. I needed to learn how to endure lack, while I still had enough. 1 week every month I eat simply. Plain rice, boiled eggs, vegetables. No soda, no coffee, no treats. I leave my phone at home for 2 hours each night and walk in the park. No music, no earbuds, no conversations. I disconnect my internet every Sunday and live with silence. I sleep on the floor a few nights a week, and I remind myself this is steel training. No one forces me to do it. But if you've ever found yourself crushed by change, you understand. Training now is better than being broken later. Epictetus said, when you step into the ring, don't hope for an easy fight. Hope you're strong enough to take the punches. And to take the punches, you need to train. Every day. When you voluntarily step into discomfort, you stop panicking when discomfort arrives. When you choose to live with less, you don't fall apart when you lose more. When you've trained yourself to go without food, comfort, affection, convenience, you stop being a slave to your circumstances. You become free. People might look at you and say, "Why live like that? That's too harsh." They don't understand. They've never stood in the middle of a crisis and realized they were too soft to handle it. They've never felt themselves tremble at bad news, unravel from abandonment, shatter from a loss of control. But you have, and you never want to go back to that version of yourself again. That's why you train. You train early. You train while things are calm. You train while you still have a choice. Because one day, life won't give you that choice. And when that day comes, what you've built in advance will save you. The Stoic isn't an ascetic. He doesn't hate pleasure. He still enjoys food, still loves, still appreciates comfort, but he doesn't depend on it. He practices living without so that when he has it, he feels gratitude. He befriends hardship, so when it arrives, he doesn't panic. And in the end, he lives with one unshakable belief. If I've forged a strong enough mind, no storm is strong enough to break me. Most of us go through life without actually living. We wake up each day like machines, minds already racing toward what we need to do, fix, and get through. While eating breakfast, we're worried about the noon meeting. During that meeting, our mind's on the afternoon deadline. And when we get home at night, instead of resting, we glue ourselves to a screen, not to relax, but to forget how meaningless the day felt. We're everywhere, but never truly present. We're not really there during dinner with the family, not truly present when playing with our kids. We don't feel the taste of coffee, the wind on our skin, the sound of birds, or even the presence of our own body. We're not living. We're just surviving in a numb state, waiting for something else to come, something that never does. I lived like that, worked like a maniac, rushed through conversations, ate fast, slept poorly. Always felt something was missing. Time, connection, peace. I sped past the most beautiful moments of my life and didn't even know it. I'd look back at a year, 2 years, 5, and couldn't recall a single day I'd truly lived. Then I read Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who lived on the battlefield but had the clarity of a monk. He wrote, "Don't waste your time thinking about what you lack. Be grateful for what you have. What you have now may be what you once prayed for." He also said, "The present is all you ever really own. The past is gone, the future hasn't come. Only this moment is truly yours." I paused, and I started slowing down, not by quitting life to become a monk, but by being present in each action. Eating. Just eat. No phone, no news, no videos. Drinking water. Feel it touch your tongue, flow down your throat. Walking. Walk with awareness, not with your face buried in a screen. Talking to my child. I look her in the eyes. I listen without judgment. I don't think about anything else. At first, it was hard. My mind jumped around like a monkey, branch to branch, non-stop. It refused to stay still. But I stayed with it, because I knew if I didn't learn to be truly present, life would pass and I'd never really lived a day of it. Seneca said, "It's not that life is short, we just waste most of it." That hit me like a bucket of cold water. How many moments have I wasted worrying about things that haven't happened? How many looks from my wife, laughs from my child, words from my clients, or chances to feel my own breath have I missed? The Stoic doesn't wait for a 30-minute morning meditation to be present. He practices presence in the smallest things. Marcus wrote while commanding armies. Seneca wrote letters while in exile. Epictetus taught while crippled and chained, yet his mind was freer than anyone's. I followed their lead. I cleaned the house like a ritual, touched each object with gratitude, washed dishes like I was meditating, wrote emails like I was speaking to a real person, not just a name in my inbox, met a friend without glancing at my phone, laid in bed, not to overthink, but just to sleep. And I discovered something strange. The more I stayed present, the less anxious I became. When I was fully there in a conversation, I stopped feeling disconnected. When I walked with awareness, every step became therapy. This is what the Stoics meant by living in accordance with nature. Not living wild, but living aligned with our highest human capacity, reason, awareness, presence. An animal reacts by instinct. A conscious man acts with intent. The longer you practice this, the clearer it becomes. The present isn't a waiting room for the future. It is life itself. What comes next isn't more important. This moment, right now, is the only thing you truly own. And if you lose it, you lose everything. Stoicism doesn't promise you won't feel pain if you live with presence, but it does guarantee this. You won't feel regret, because someone who truly lives in the present never has to say, "I wish I had." Have you ever done everything right, prepared thoroughly, gave it your all, believed in the outcome, only to fail anyway? Have you ever loved someone with complete sincerity, gave without holding back, only to be left behind? Have you ever built an entire year's plan around one deal, one project, one milestone, only for it all to collapse after one phone call? If you have, then you know the feeling isn't just disappointment, it's disorientation. It feels like the floor has dropped out from under you. Not because you didn't try hard enough, but because you clung too tightly to the belief that the outcome had to go your way. And when it didn't, you were left falling into a bottomless void. The Stoics understood this long before us. They called it disillusionment through attachment. And to protect themselves from being crushed by unmet expectations, they practiced a principle most people today have forgotten: the reserve clause. Seneca wrote, "When you begin an action, always add the thought, if fate allows, because some things are outside your control, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't give your best." Marcus Aurelius reminded, "Do your work as if everything depends on your effort, but receive the result as if it were never in your hands." I call it living fully, without clinging. I used to lose control over results. I walked into a major negotiation, convinced I had everything lined up. I'd planned it down to the detail. But at the last minute, the other party changed course, everything. Not just the deal. I lost my composure. I lashed out, fell into depression, doubted myself, couldn't sleep for days. Then I learned something from Epictetus. You may only suffer for what lies within your control. If it lies outside of that, then your suffering is wasted. I looked back on the deal. I had done my part, but I had no control over the other side. No control over the market. No control over capital flows, politics, or someone else's feelings. And for that, I shouldn't have lost my peace. Since then, I've practiced the Stoic approach. Before every action, I remind myself, if fate allows. Not as an excuse to quit, but as a reminder to myself, do everything you can, then let go. I walk into important meetings with full preparation, and one whisper in my mind, if this is meant for me, it will be. If not, I'll still stand. I write passionate emails, but after I send them, I don't obsess over who replies or who doesn't. I've done my part. What happens next is not mine to own. I treat others with kindness, not to get something back, but because it's who I choose to be. If they respond in kind, great. If they don't, I don't regret it. I build, I invest, I put in the work with full energy, but always carry one quiet clause in my heart, if life allows. Because I know there are too many variables I can't control. And that small clause is what anchors me. Stoics aren't cold, they love fully, work relentlessly, give without keeping score. But they don't let outcomes dictate their inner peace. They don't let life's uncertainty destroy their stability. This is one of the hardest arts and also the most liberating. Because when you act without attachment, you move through life lightly. You're not afraid of rejection. You're not dragged around by outcomes. You're not desperate to control everything. You stay engaged, but detached from the whirlwind of expectation. And when failure comes, you don't collapse. You reflect, adjust, move forward. Like someone who had nothing to lose because they never clung to it in the first place. Acting with a reserve clause sounds small, but in a world full of risk, pressure, uncertainty, and loss, it's what keeps you sane. It's what protects your dignity, your clarity, and your freedom of mind. The Stoics always reminded each other, do your part, let the universe decide the result. And that release, that letting go, is the highest form of strength. Thank you for being here. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, turn on notifications, and like this video. Don't forget to leave a comment so we can spread positivity together.